The talk Stop DevOps and Rollout Software attempts to answer the question that's burning in a lot of folks' minds, which is, what is DevOps anyway? Well, if you look at the word, you see that we've taken the word dev and the word ops and we've clubbed those together. And so really, at its heart, what DevOps is about is bringing those two together. When we think a lot about how we release software in our enterprises, we'll have the development team which will put together a release, and they'll essentially throw it over a wall to the operations team that'll be responsible for putting that out there for consumption. And what all too often happens is, because there's a lack of communication between those two groups, there will be problems that come up, and then there will be finger pointing, and the whole operation turns into a train wreck. And this unfortunately happens to be the status quo in a lot of organizations because of the so-called wall of confusion, that we've built silos in our organization. We have a group that simply does development, we have a group that does QA, and we have a group that does operations. And all of these groups have different mandates and different reporting structures, and they don't necessarily have any incentive to work together as a team. And if you get right down to it, Dev and Ops have very different attitudes with respect to change. If I'm a developer, I feel like change is what I get paid for. I'm there to develop software in the face of changing business needs. And if we don't have change, then I don't get paid. Operations, on the other side, their job is to keep things stable and to keep the lights on. And to them, change is the enemy. And so anytime you introduce change, it potentially introduces stability into what they're trying to maintain. And so the two seem to be at odds. Well, as it turns out, both of them think they're doing the right thing for the organization, but they just look at change in very different ways. And if you see it in isolation, they're actually correct. The problem is that they're both looking at two sides of the same coin, if you will. So what we need to do with DevOps is to see it as solving a business problem. How can we look at the fact that we're not here to do development, we're not here to do operations, we're here to deliver business value? How do we break down these walls, tear down the silos, and bring everyone together and make them a part of a single value stream so that we can get more of what Goldratt calls the goal, which in most organizations is the idea that we want to be profitable, we want to make more money. And so we're not paid to write code, we're paid to actually make the business more money. Now, one of the things that often comes up is all of the tools. Well, we talk about Puppet, and we talk about Chef and Vagrant and Nagios and Noah and tools like those. And yes, DevOps has a lot of tools. It's about automation, but it's less about the tools themselves. It's about the ideas they provoke, about the things that they make possible. Now, we'll talk about a lot of things that we need to do in this talk. I know you're all very busy. So what I'm going to do is give you a framework in which you can start to attack these problems. It's a framework that I borrowed from the folks who do the DevOps Cafe podcast, and they call it CAMS, which stands for Culture, Automation, Measurement, and Sharing. The first point is culture. You have to attack culture first. If your culture is in opposition to what you're trying to do, it will always undermine your ability to succeed. Now, it's very hard to change culture because culture is actually the manifestation of a collection of behaviors over time. So what you actually have to do is attack behavior. And the way we attack behavior is we make it undesirable to do the behaviors that we don't want to happen, and we incentivize the behaviors that we do want to happen, and we hope over time that that turns into a culture that is more conducive to achieving business value. The second thing is automation. We want to make it possible to reconstruct the business simply from a source code repository, a data backup, and raw metal resources. Well, the only way we can do that is if we get away from the practice of servers handcrafted by artisans, if you will, and get into the practice of automating the management of our infrastructure in much the same way we automate the management of our code. Measurement looks at the idea that we need to know if we're actually making progress. If we're doing all of these changes and we don't know if we've made things better, we've essentially lost. And so we need to look at several metrics such as mean time between failures, mean time to discovery, the 10th floor test, and others. And we'll explain how those show us whether or not we've done a good job with our DevOps solutions and move the business forward. And then finally, sharing. If we hold all this knowledge to ourselves, it doesn't really do anything in anybody any good. So what we need to do is bring groups together within the company to share knowledge, bring companies together to share knowledge across companies, and also build a community, whether it's meetups or podcasts, email newsletters, discussion forums, where we share these ideas and elevate them to the same level of discussion that we've done with Agile and the lean movement beyond that.